Again and again we are deeply aware of the circle that shuts us in, so that despite all of our many-sided exposures to each other, we are cut off, we are alone in our solitariness. So much of our aloneness is due to the uncertainties of our own feelings about ourselves and about others. At times we are aware of the way in which, in our blindness, a careless word, a look out of which all kindness has been extracted, may undermine the confidence and the strength of someone who walks the way with us. We are so involved in the necessities of our own lives, trying to thread our mystery with such simple clues as are close at hand, that we are unmindful of the ways in which we turn others empty from our door. We are aware of our own hurts, our own wounds, our own injuries. And out of the depths of our private agonies, we are tempted to feel that no one understands, and those who understand do not care. And thus we gather together in the midst of the congregation, touching each other's shoulder, sharing in the common sense of the common presence, until at last there begins to stir within us something that breaks the circle, that spills over into other lives, and we are no longer alone. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Forever and ever. We are picking up the threads of our thinking together about Jesus and the disinherited. And this morning we are thinking together about the poor and the disinherited. As a background, will you listen to these two readings from the same British poet from whom I've been reading most of the time in the series. Martha of Bethany, this is called. It's all very well sitting in the shade of the courtyard talking about your souls. Someone's got to see to the cooking, standing at the oven all morning with you two taking your ease. It's all very well saying he'd be content with bread and honey. Perhaps he would, but I wouldn't, coming to our house like this, not giving him our best. Yes, it's all very well, him trying to excuse you, saying your recipe's best, saying I worry too much, that I'm always anxious. Someone's got to worry, and double if the others don't care, for it's all very well talking of faith and belief. But what would you do if everyone sat in the cool, not getting their meal? And he can't go wandering and preaching on an empty stomach. He'd die in the first fortnight. Then where would you be with all your discussions and questions and no one to answer them? It's all very well. Now this rich young ruler. What must I do, master, to gain eternal life? From my youth I have kept the commandments, honored my parents. Theft, murder, lying, adultery, all these by God's mercy have passed me by. What then must I do, master? What more must I do? Sell all, he replied, and follow me. An easy say. He, a carpenter's son, sacrificed nothing. And his man Peter, smirking, self-righteous, what did he lose but some worn nets, a boat share, and trade in the market? It wasn't myself I was thinking of, ease and possessions, but the responsibility of wealth towards its dependents. What of them if I had obeyed him? What of my servants? That's what I tell myself now, but do I believe it? Then, silent, I walked away, watching my sandals, while his voice, the voice of my heart, followed me homeward. In misery, I stopped by the lake. Hid by the crowd wall, I heard him speak of the kingdom of God, the camel and the needle. I invite you to move back at the beginning of our thinking in order to pick up a thread that moves more and more to the heart of my concern in this entire series. It was pointed out that Jesus was a Jew and that he was intensely Jewish. That he lived and wrought his work from within the context of the Jewish community. All of his points of fundamental reference that sprang out of the peculiar quality of his religious experience, these were rooted in Israel. He so deeply influenced those who were his earliest followers that for a long time they were made up largely of persons who were not only Jewish, but who also were functioning actively in the house of Israel. Now this we forget, but to pursue it is beside my point. He was also a poor Jew. A poor Jew. For when, in accordance with the Jewish law, the child that openeth the womb should, after the period of the cleansing of the mother, be brought to the temple for dedication, a lamb for a burnt offering, turtle dove or a pigeon for a sin offering. When Jesus was brought to the temple, 2 turtle doves, 2 pigeons. For the law said that if the family be too poor to afford a lamb, then the family may use 2 turtle doves and 2 pigeons. 2 turtle doves for the burnt offering, 2 pigeons for the sin offering. He was poor. But he was poor not merely in the sense of limited economic resources, but he was poor in terms of the larger community to which he belonged, for his community was a marginal community in the Greco-Roman world. A marginal community. You know what that means? For this will open up to us the meaning of being poor. 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 That is, that you stand outside of the normal guarantors of security in your society. You are without the symbols that are accepted by the society as being manifestations of authentic belonging. To be marginal, to be on the fringe, and one of the effects of this is to give to the individuals to tend to give to the individuals a very low self-estimate. I remember one night in North India, after a public meeting, and we had gone to the place of our retirement, and as a matter of fact, we had retired. And there was a gentle rapping at the outside door. And in characteristic fashion, lest I might disturb the nocturnal ramblings of some unsuspecting cobra, I took my flashlight and made a nice illumination on the floor so that we would be of one party. And I went to the door, and at the door there stood a little Indian boy, his head down, and he said, "I have come because I heard what you said tonight. I was standing outside listening. Is there anything that you can say that can help a nobody?" He was an untouchable. Now, we say that this is an extreme and dramatic manifestation of the concern that's in my mind, but let's examine it. When you are outside of the mainstream of a society, you are disinherited. And you feel that nothing that you do, nothing that you may become, can have any direct bearing on the social process that regulates and determines the common life. How do you think Jesus or any Jew of his time reacted when a family was visited by a Roman legion? That which is the symbol of the controller and the dominant mind of the society, when it is brought into primary contact with those who stand just outside, there is a sense of utter defenselessness, because there is no legitimate way by which you can count effectively. Now, this was a part of the psychology by which the life of Jesus was surrounded. So that when he began thinking about the way by which the marginal units in his society would be able to survive, to have a sense of participation in the common life, he looked around to see where in the society, within the Jewish community, where had there been worked out some kind of social answer to this problem. The Pharisees, by the logic of their origination or their origin, should have found an answer, but they had not. As we pointed out, they had withdrawn more and more, and being apart, but not involved. The Herodians had taken another position, and the Sadducees had taken another position. But there was one group, the Essenes, who seemed, perhaps they have gotten a clue. We don't know to what extent Jesus was involved in the movement of the Essenes. There's a great deal of discussion about it now that the scrolls, now that the scrolls have been found. But as I look at this, it seems to me that there was something in the notion of the Essenes that at first must have attracted Jesus. Of course, all this may sound very academic to you, but it's very important to get it in our heads. Here was a group, you see, that had withdrawn into places of retreat, some of them. They had established a community, a common community, sharing everything. They were responsive to a central righteous leader. They did not stay in their retreats, but they projected this communal way into the traffic of the common life in the Greco-Roman world. They learned what it meant to pool interests, to pool concern, to put at the disposal of a common ideal all that you have. They were able to experience commitment with a spiritual immunity against the idolatry of commitment. But there was something wrong with it. If the clue to survival is to be found by principles that can only be worked out in some kind of esoteric community, then these principles are not particularly valid, because most of the people will not be involved in any kind of esoteric community. Where in the common experience of the people, may there be found a clue which will give to them a means by which they may survive in a manner that is personally and spiritually redemptive. And where was this to be found? The only place that it could be found, as Jesus saw it, was in the family. Because you did not have to set up a little private esoteric world in anticipation of the end of the age, but you could just be in the family and learn all of these things. Now, what then does the family, from this point of view, say about the clue to the survival of the individual in terms of his essential dignity? For this, after all, you see, is the problem of the poor. How can I count, even to myself, particularly if my heritage is that if you are poor, it means that you're not prosperous. And if you're not prosperous, it means that God has not blessed you. And if God has not blessed you, then it means that God takes the same attitude towards you that the society takes. So you are lost in both dimensions. Now, Jesus took this and introduced something else. The thing that gives to the individual his meaning is not how he is classified. It has nothing to do with blood. It has nothing to do with status. It has nothing to do with anything that is organic. What he did was to take the kind of discovery that the family makes of the individual and project that discovery on a canvas that is as wide as the human race. For in the family, even though the child may be crippled, may be blind, may be an imbecile, may be dull-witted, may be brilliant, may be ugly, but somewhere within the structure of the family, there is worked out a way by which the tenderness, the love, all that is meant by caring can be spelled out at the level of the person whose need is greatest and who may be least able to defend himself. Now, this is the thing, this is the place where it is worked out. Now, says Jesus, the whole human race is the family of God. That God cares for the individual. And we must, in our relationships to the individual, deal with the individual this way. rather than this way. Now, what does this mean? In terms of the political and social and economic survival of a group. This was his practical problem, you see. I would suggest that what he discovered and the definition that he gives to the meaning of the discovery, namely love, was for him and his world not merely a religion and a religious experience, but it was a technique of survival by which the experience of the individual would counteract the effect of the individual's being on the margin of the society. Now, this places within the reach of the individual a kind of emotional security which by some standards may be regarded as wishful thinking. But it is ultimately the only answer to the three persistent demons that always work away at the life, the common life, and the security of the poor, the weak, the disinherited. Fear, as we shall point out later. Not fear of an individual, but fear as a mood of the spirit. Fear as a climate. Hate as a device by which the emotional security and the personal dignity of the individual is affirmed in the presence of forces and persons that would seek to undercut its meaning. And hypocrisy as a device by which, when you are marginal, you seek to give to yourself the security of being non-marginal by not ever letting any persons who are not marginal be able to locate you. So that the weak, the poor, have always found in Christianity something which is not always emphasized in Christianity. I was 25 years old before I ever heard from our pulpits a sermon which addressed itself to what Christianity had to say to people who stood with their backs against the wall. All of my life I had heard sermons about what our attitude should be towards people who stand with their backs against the wall, how we should help, how we should succor, how we should give aid, all of the things in such terms. But what is the counsel of the religion to the man who is desperate? And it is this that Jesus saw, and it is to this that he addressed himself. This is the heart of his religion. And again, this has been missed in our emphasis. gospel is preached, whatever may be the power-written emphasis that it may have, this insistence on the part of Jesus manages to get through to the desperate. And that is why his religion, though not a political or economic reformist religion, the logic of it in what it does to underscore and to deepen and to make aware the dignity of the individual becomes the source of revolution and the source for social change. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the disinherited, for they shall inherit the earth. I wonder what would happen if we ever believe this. Walk beside us, our Father, leaving in our hearts the quiet strength of thy companionship, that we may live each day as thy children, unafraid.